Let's get you right back in for more of the defense case and the case against Blaise Taylor there in Nashville, Tennessee. We have on the stand a private investigator, Nia Gutierrez, who has been talking about the crime scene, the apartment, and what she was able to observe from the outside because she works for the defense.
To impeach with hearsay.
Based on reliable information.
Correct. And I believe that the information that Ms. Gutierrez received.
Do you have someone that you're calling from a police department saying he wasn't a police officer?
Yes, sir.
You do?
We have researched and looked
No, I'm
at
saying, do you have a person from that department?
Ms. Gutierrez called that
I'll
department
sustain the
directly.
objection.
And, Your Honor, if I may, through this witness, introduce this judgment.
I certainly object to that.
Okay. The
It was
judgment about.
It's a certified copy in regards to
Okay.
Mr.
Have
Jones.
you looked at the certified copy?
I'm not sure which one.
Yes.
We have the one,
Here you go. I gave it to you last week, but I'll give you another.
but may we approach?
Oh, okay.
All right, there's been a lot of debate over this last question to this witness on the stand. And the defense was trying to get something out about, it seems like this conversation between someone who may have been a police officer, may not have been a police officer, but we know this comes after she was doing her investigation of this case. She started in 2024 investigating this case. This death happened in 2023. But it highlights something interesting that jurors will pick up on if they find it important to this case. But it took a year before the defendant was actually arrested. He was investigated, obviously, because the friend here, Nigel Jackson, had an outcry immediately saying, I overheard a phone call where my friend was saying, you put something in my drink. But it could point to how difficult it was to prove a case against him. Toxicology can take a long time, and there's questions about the toxicology and what came back. Let's go back into the courtroom now. It seems like they have wrapped up that issue with the objection from the state.
And Willis and Associates.
Okay. And is that based in Texas with an office here, or is it totally Texas?
The Willis and Associates firm is based out of Houston, Texas, and Covert is here out of Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay, and so when were you retained? When were your Covert or?
Are you asking if I've been retained through which firm?
Yes.
Or, okay. Okay, well, I've been retained under Willis and Associates since before my move to Tennessee on this case.
I was just trying to get the time lined down. And with respect to this particular case, when were you retained?
Covert Results was retained at some point on the case after Willis and Associates, but is my understanding, to my knowledge.
When were you retained on this case?
I start billing.
I'm billing under Willis.
When did you start?
Early 2024.
And what is early 2024?
I would say probably March.
Do you have records of that?
Yes, according to timesheets that I turn in, correct.
And do you have those with you?
I do not, but I can get them if needed.
Did you have any other involvement as an investigator with this case prior to, when you say early 2024?
No.
Were you familiar with this apartment complex prior to being
No,
retained?
I was not.
Now, Ontario is an apartment complex on Lebanon Pike here in Nashville, Davidson County, Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
Correct?
Yes.
And this sign is at the entrance, correct?
At the entrance, correct. Main entrance.
And Miss Benning's apartment that you were directed to
Mm-hmm.
is essentially in the far back corner, correct?
I would say the center far back corner building.
Well, council's seen this photograph. They put this view. Actually, it might show better, but you have the ability to touch this.
Mm-hmm.
Where is the sign that we just saw?
It would be right about here.
Okay. And Miss Benning's apartment would be in that general area, correct?
No, that would be the entrance to the breezeway to her apartment, but not on that corner.
Okay, well, would you circle in what
It would-
part of that corner it is?
Probably right here towards the center, somewhere in that section.
All right. Here, another one that's a little bit further out. And this is a larger view of the businesses in the area, correct?
Yes.
And the truck repair place is in the top of the picture, would that be correct?
Yes.
And now on this picture, could you circle what you say is Miss Benning's apartment?
You want me to circle it on here?
Yes, please. And again, circle the entrance.
Where the marquee would have been?
Yes. Thank you. All right, I would tender these photographs as the next one would be 58, 57.
There are two.
There are two, yes.
Okay, just make a collective 57.
And this is part of Exhibit 56 that we've previously seen. Would you circle again the, what you say is the window to Ms. Benning's apartment? No. The next window over, is this also not a part of her apartment, or do you know?
I don't recall. I have to look at a bigger angle. But it is possible.
Okay. And obviously, as we see in this picture, the blinds are closed all around, correct?
Yes.
You never went in this apartment, did you?
I did not.
And the photographs that you took, do you know when those were taken, the date and time?
Can I look at my notes, Your Honor?
Sure.
On June 21st, June 24th, and June 26th, just this recent, I visited the property.
Okay. This month.
Correct.
Had you visited the apartment complex prior to that?
I had not.
All right, let's step step aside so we can get some analysis on where we are in this case. We have joining us this hour criminal defense attorney Silva Megerditchian. Silva, it is great to have you on. It's been a little bit, so I don't think I've talked to you about this case. So before we get into the private investigator on the stand, what are some of the biggest issues standing out for you about this case?
Well, hi, Julia. Thank you so much for having me on. You know how much I adore you and respect you. Look, this has been a little bit of a roller coaster for me because honestly, the police made a lot of mistakes in this case. We know delayed forensics. And the major issue, too, is the missing drugs, right? There was absolutely no sign in the apartment that there were drugs, right? That could have contributed to this ridiculous amount in her system that he's alleged to have put in her cup, right? So there's a lot of issues of reasonable doubt for me when it comes to forensics. However, the defendant does not have a good look here. The prosecution put a very strong case when it comes to, if not him, who else? The ex-girlfriend testifying that, he had paid for abortions for other women and that he really wasn't a person who wanted a child. That's going to really stay in the jurors' minds. So the defense really has to alter this. And by having their private investigator on, they want to show that she investigated properly, much better, more fulfilled than the prosecution's own police team did. So it'll be interesting to see where the defense goes after this PI.
I agree with you on that point, especially with the if not him, who theory that may be in the jurors' minds. And I think we do have, we'll be talking about later, the breakdown of this jury, of what we know about them. But I think that they'll have a difficult time acquitting when there really isn't any other person. But the defense has tried to say that it may be the victim herself, may even be something with her friends. And let's talk about that, because this witness on the stand, it's all about the contaminated crime scene. The fact that friends, family, people were going to this apartment before police got there to secure it. They didn't get there for about 24 hours. And we even have friends who went into this scene and gathered evidence, put on gloves, put a comforter that she would have vomited on into a trash bag and took it away. There are a lot of innocent reasons, Silva, for a contaminated crime scene. I mean, there's really no pristine crime scenes, right? The suspect or whoever is ultimately responsible does things to the scene. Medics, when they come in to take someone away, they interrupt the scene. But what do you think the impact is of this, quote, contaminated scene?
I think the defense really has to spin this very strongly, that there were so many mistakes made, and there didn't have to be. And there are always mistakes in forensic scenes. And Julia, we see this, right? Certain cases, they're so big. I mean, OJ is one of the biggest issues, right? If the glove doesn't fit, you must acquit, even though there was so much DNA evidence. In this case, the defense really has to harp upon the fact, look, there was absolutely nothing found. So what directly links him other than friends and family that just thought he had something to do with it? A thought is not enough. A bad-looking guy is not enough to convict beyond a reasonable doubt. We all want something more in order to convict. But the prosecution's really going to harp on exactly what we said, Julia. If not him, then who? We don't need a wham, bam, here are the drugs, because people clean up scenes. As you said, it was 24 hours that anything could have been done. But again, I think in the back of the jurors' minds, they're going to say, look, there's no forensics, but there weren't forensics for anyone else either. And this guy legitimately did not want this baby. But you can't convict on a thought or a belief. But again, let's see what the defense does. This is one of those crazy cases, Julia, where you can see, honestly, a conviction because of what the jurors see in front of them as it's happening. Do they believe that the prosecution adequately proved their case enough that there's no reasonable doubt in their mind that despite the lack of direct evidence forensics, this guy killed his girlfriend and her baby?
That's the prosecution's position. They have already rested their case, so we are in the defense case. And when we come back, Silva, stand by. Someone with a really interesting title. So we know the defendant worked as an NFL scout for the Tennessee Titans. And the next person on the stand for the defense is a clinical physician for the team. What can they say that's going to help this case and move things forward for the jury? We'll watch together after this.